Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my AM reading video for Friday, June 18th, 2021. I actually got a sudden announcement that because President Biden named Juneteenth a national holiday, that I would not be reporting to work since I work in a building for the federal government, but it was all very last minute. It's like, I go into work on Thursday thinking, oh, it'll be a normal 5-day week, but then by the end of the day it's like, oh, nope, nope, you stay home the next day. But even with that in mind and me being able to stay home all day, I'm still getting this video out kind of late. To be fair, I've spent a lot of the day reading and writing. I'm actually quite tired right now, so hopefully I can stop rambling and maybe do a quick update on my week of reading. Here's my first weekly update that I started last month. I am slowly reading through Dorothy Parker's complete stories, just sharing one of the stories with you per week. I started it last month because last month was Jewish American Heritage Month and also Short Story Month. I do intend to ultimately finish this collection this month, but at the moment I'm just going through at a snail's pace and, and sharing one story with you, still eking from the beginning of the collection. The story I read this week is called The Wonderful Old Gentleman, written in 1926. It's a story that actually feels almost timeless or contemporary. Or I mean, I could relate to it now because it's about an older man called the Old Gentleman who is getting up there in years, is living with one of his children, and they're taking care of him as he dies, basically. I mean, that part of it's like, oh, that could still kind of happen today. And I think a lot of the interactions also are kind of, could still be very relatable. I mean, because there's just some tension in the story about the old gentleman has moved in with one of his daughters, Mrs. Bain, and has changed her house in ways she doesn't like so much. There's been issues with his relationship with her son, who's now in the Navy. There's also issues with the story takes place with Mrs. Bain and her sister talking as the old gentleman is actually dying upstairs. He's taken a turn for the worse, and they're thinking this is going to be the end of it. And they also have a brother who apparently is fond of the drink or something, so he isn't around, and there's family drama there. And I guess, to be fair, I just read this story and I was mentioning that I'm tired, and I think I might have gotten more out of it if I was a little more lucid, but I could definitely sense, the social commentary and family drama that Parker is so fond of, and, these are very relatable circumstances, absolutely. Another thing I guess that hit me is, of course, what a time to be talking downstairs during the last moments of your father's life. It kind of says something about the relationship right there. So the first full book I finished this week is The ICKABOG by J.K. Rowling. This is a book that apparently she was writing in snippets, while finishing up Harry Potter books even, and then she was reading little chapters to her kids before bed, and then she, stuffed it in a drawer and forgot about it until coronavirus, and, everyone's stuck at home, and she's like, well, maybe I can share this story with people, and she was, releasing it chapter by chapter online, and there was an international contest for illustrations, and this book is actually filled with illustrations by young kids who are incredible drawers, and they're drawing the story. So the ICKABOG is a fantasy novel. It's sort of a lower middle grade fantasy than Harry Potter, I would say. It's a folkloric tale taking place in a country called Cornucopia, and it's known, of course, for its riches, particularly in foodstuffs. They are run by King Fred the Fearless. He's kind of a ineffectual king, and he's kind of vain and selfish and cruel. That's a mantra that I think I talked about last week too. But mostly, he just goes along his high life and doesn't bother people, and things go on well without him. But of course, a series of circumstances have to start to get the plot going, where his vanity leads to the death of the main character's mother, and then in an attempt, he overhears that, you know, this main character, Daisy, Dovetail, a young girl who's now motherless, doesn't like him so much, and he, you know, has a fragile ego and wants to prove himself. And so he ends up going to fight a mythical creature called the ICKABOG that sort of the outsiders of his kingdom, the poor marshlanders. They swear the ICKABOG exists and is this big monster. And the rest of the kingdom's like, oh no, that's nonsense. But, you know, King Fred is trying to make a name for himself, so he drags his army and his advisors to the marshlands, and they enter the fog, and things go awry. First of all, the father of the second main character, Bert, who is Daisy's friend, ends up dead, but it's clear that he is shot by one of the advisors who, you know, can't see through the fog and was frightened. But the other advisor, main advisor, who is a very conniving man, decides that he's going to spin all of this to his advantage. So he's able to, you know, convince the foppish king that the ICKABOG actually exists. And it's a lie that gets away from him really quickly. Like, he has to explain away the death of the major. Like, the story gets very convoluted. The people are afraid of the ICKABOG, but that is the advisor's plan. He wants to sort of use their fear for his advantage. He starts by levying an ICKABOG tax for their protection, but of course the army isn't actually fighting an ICKABOG because they don't actually think there is one. So it's a story about how a lie gets away from you. It's about how greed builds on itself. It's about a society that sort of rots from the inside. This, you know, once fertile, lush cornucopian society becomes impoverished, and people are really struggling, and the advisor's trying to keep that information from the king, who thinks everything's still okay, and it's basically how things can rot from within due to the greed of bad actors. You know, morality tale for a middle grade audience about well, I guess about the true monstrousness, I think, that humans can get to. And of course, we have, on the opposite side, we have Bert and Daisy, who are the young, pluckish kids. They have lost parents. Another thing that happens is that anybody who dares, you know, try to speak up against the advisor, you know, they often find themselves killed in mysterious circumstances or put in a dungeon. So Bert and Daisy essentially end up parentless, and, you know, they're the young plucky kids who ultimately get to save the day, but I won't go into too many spoilers about that. But I liked it. It was, you know, engaging, propulsive writing. I think a really creative way to get through these themes, talking about them more comprehensively, I think, that I did in this review. Really, I would suggest this book, really, for a middle grade audience. There's still that sense of monstrousness and a looming danger in a straightforward sense. I mean, maybe the ICKABOG does exist, but there's also this messaging about, you know, take care about the society you live in and the monsters that humans themselves can create. So, yeah, not too surprising that this is part of Rowling's collection that spoke to me. The next book I finished is These Days Are Ours by Michelle Haimoff. This is a novel that I put on my Goodreads list in 2016, and I have a goal to, you know, clear the novels that I put on my Goodreads list in 2016. This is a novel with some slight Jewish content. It takes place 6 months after 9/11 in New York, so people are still kind of reeling from it, or at least, you know, there's terror alerts every day and people always talk about 9/11. But there is enough distance that most people are starting to go on with their lives again. But Haimoff has written a character, Haley, who is in the cusp of change, and so she thinks a lot about 9/11. She has recently graduated college and is going through the arduous and demoralizing task of trying to find a job. She's a very privileged person. She's very wealthy. She lives in a penthouse. Her parents or her mother and her father-in-law, or her mother and her stepfather, are both high up executives in Condé Nast, a media company. But she's trying to kind of make it on her own. She has a group of disaffected friends. They go out drinking a lot, and they do talk about current events and trying to find themselves in a snarky sort of way. That although it made me think of reading other literature where the characters were insufferably intellectual about like classical philosophy and literature, and these people didn't have any of that. They're talking like current events and pop culture. And I think they threw in reference to an Ernest Hemingway novel once. Anyway, Haley, it's an interesting juxtaposition. She's thinking of sort of the way that 9/11 broke the innocence of the country. And her innocence has also been kind of broken by her parents' divorce, albeit 12 years ago. But it really put a damper in her relationship with both of her parents. Like, her mother turned into this sort of distant woman who always wears black. I mean, she's somewhat there, but she's also kind of distant, and her father seems to live in nostalgia land. Her brother has basically fallen off the map. He's living now in Miami. He has no contact or limited contact with any of them and seems to have a drug problem. So she really feels like she is, and is, I suppose, part of a broken family and is straining for some sort of stability. So she develops a crush on this guy that she hooked up with once in college named Brenner. He's somebody from a similar economic background as her, but his family is picture perfect, at least from the outside. And he's, a stereotypical great Jewish catch. He's about to become a human rights lawyer and yada yada, the apple of any mother's eye sort of deal. And she fantasizes about marrying him and, becoming part of a beaver cleaver sort of family, basically, having that support again. There's the slight problem that he really is a bit of an ass. Even as she's like trying to go about like courting him, she's kind of aware of that. But I think the dream means more to her. But amidst all of that, the futile, largely job search and partying with friends on the side and, trying to get Brenner, she does meet a new person from outside of her social circle, a young man named Adrian, who, she meets at a Passover Seder, a friend of friends sort of thing. He comes from less money. He's not, indigenous to New York City. And, that's another part of this book is, what it means, all of those social references growing up Gen X in New York City. And this guy doesn't have it. He's just someone looking for a job, and he actually, needs money pretty ASAP, unlike, Haley and her friends. So he kind of opens up her world a little bit, I guess, makes her see something a little more sincere, and gives her like a real relationship of value rather than, the fake one she's chasing with Brenner. So I guess I've spoiled parts of this in a way, but, it's that sort of novel. It's, just a sort of slice of life novel about what it means to be on the cusp of change during this time period, from this specific set of circumstances, from this privileged economic upbringing, but also the personal sense of trying to sort of find stability again when your family's pretty broken. And for the most part, I liked how she handled it, although I feel like I guess I wish some of the characters were a little more developed, although I also liked the distance because I felt like it said something about Haley's issues, so I'm going back and forth on that one. This isn't actually the first novel I've read from Gen Xer waxing nostalgia about the growing up years in New York City even. I remember reading The Falconer by Dana Sopnik, I think a couple of years back, which I think was a little stronger than this book. The characters and the situations were stronger. And overall, I really liked the experience and liked getting a sense of Haley finding herself a little bit. The next book I finished is Thick and Other Essays by Tressie McMillan Cottom. I picked up this book because it was the nonfiction winner in 2019 for the Reading Women podcast put on by booktuber Kendra Winchester and her friend Autumn Privet. I have annually picked up the fiction and nonfiction winners that they decide on every year, although obviously I'm a little bit behind because this year I'm tackling 2019 winners. So this is a collection of essays by Tressie McMillan Cottom. She is an assistant professor of sociology, apparently relatively well known in a sort of intersectional way, sort of like she has gained attention like for her Twitter writing as sort of, that sort of vernacular unofficial sphere, but also, she has some clout in the professional world as well. Although she is a black woman, and a lot of these essays really do talk about the structural inequality of black women in all aspects of life in America, and it's certainly, especially in academia. I actually found the writing to be a little hard to parse, which is a little ironic because it's like she acknowledges it in the beginning, like, the whole idea of this thick thing is, it's a reference really to her body type, that black women of this body type are called thick, and she sort of extrapolates from that she has sort of a thick, like, multi-dimensional sense of self. And so in a way that's like, what comes across here is that, she's part vernacular and part, academic writing, she's partially talking about her personal life and partially talking about data. And the writing style itself, I just felt like it was just sort of a weird and distant mix sometimes, like I found myself sort of glazing over some of the sentences on a structural level. But I did also, learn some things and take some things to heart here. There was a story where she linked the structural incompetence of LinkedIn to a really harrowing personal story where she lost her baby in childbirth, which was very much based upon the medical establishment ignoring her pain and ignoring her experience as she was trying to get help and they were blowing her off. It's the sort of thing that I think has been covered a little bit of in the media. It happens to women, and especially black women, that the medical establishment sort of sees them complaining about their pain as, their incompetence rather than a real problem. And to connect that to the way that LinkedIn works, which is a website that is supposed to be good for networking for, job connections, linking that to her baby speaks to the fact that in the medical establishment, it's like her baby's death is almost like a commodity. It's not like it's about real people. It's like about a situation that they have to manage. Like, the whole narrative is about them, first denying her pain and then, making excuses like, you didn't tell us that this was a problem, or stuff like that. So it felt like, this is very much a critique of capitalism. She's very anti-capitalist in a lot of these essays, and in other cases, I kind of wish, if she was going to make the argument she does against capitalism, that there was something with a little more substance in the essays to talk about it, but in this one, it really hit home. She's obviously very intelligent. I was grateful to read this collection to get her perspective and to look at the world in different ways, particularly, in that essay about LinkedIn and the response to her pain in the hospital. This isn't like a blow-away hit for me or anything, but it definitely made me think. Next, we're getting into my current reading, and this is very exciting. In fact, I just got this book in the mail today. This is The Layover by Lacie Waldon. I have talked about it in earlier videos. It's one of my anticipated reads of the year. It's the one I am most personally invested in because Lacie and I were part of a writing group together. In fact, my group is, acknowledged in the acknowledgments. This novel is a breezy romantic comedy about a flight attendant, which, spoiler alert, my friend Lacie is also a flight attendant. Ava Green is newly engaged to a lawyer, Alexander. They've decided that she's going to quit her job being a flight attendant. It's, a job where she's away from home a lot. And she actually wants to settle down. Apparently her parents had her jet setting all the time, and it made her want to keep her feet on the ground, and she met this great guy apparently, and that's going to be their plan. But for the last 9 years, she's been flight attending, and you can tell almost immediately that, she has a lot of, nostalgia for the job, or a lot of love for the job, and it's a bit bittersweet that she's leaving. We are following her now on her final trip where she's doing a layover in Belize, and she's trying to sort of, craft the best, going away goodbye job for herself, and she runs into this former pilot, Jack, who is a bit of a cocky jerk with whom she has some past beef. So she's not thrilled that he is in her sights and they're on this flight together, and they've already had a couple of tense interactions, more tense on her end than his. He's, cocky flyboy sort of guy. And that's basically where I've left off. I've read the first 2 chapters. I did that deliberately because a couple of years ago she submitted the first 2 chapters of the book for our perusal before the book kind of took off like a shot, and her agent and sold it to an editor, and yada yada, and the rest is history. So I went ahead actually and I found the old document in my emails, and I was comparing and contrasting the first 2 chapters, which was really fun. Like the way she started chapter 1 in the beginning, it was a good thing she fixed this, I think. She started like with backstory about, Ava and her parents, rather than in the moment, like on when she's waking up to go to her job. She fleshes out a few things, like she gives Alexander a case that he's worried about that apparently, I guess, will play in a little bit later. She also gives more dimension to Ava's relationship with Jack. Like in the first draft, Ava just heard rumors that he was a playboy, and she tried to keep her distance. But in this case, they have some history from a couple of years ago that's been hinted at that, is something that Ava still thinks about as like a bad experience, and apparently it seems like Jack has completely forgotten about. So yeah, those are the major changes that I could see between the 2 chapters. There's a minor one that I was almost disappointed by, seeing that she took out for whatever reason. She had a scene, like, throughout both the draft and the final version, you can tell that Ava's narrative is saying, I'm going to miss this. Maybe I don't want to leave this job. And at one point, she's going to her favorite place in the Chicago airport to get breakfast. And she's thinking, well, next week I'll be sitting in Alexander's steel kitchen eating food. And that was one of the things, I guess, that stuck out to me, that maybe spoke in the draft about the coldness of the possibility of their life. But she took that out for whatever reason in this book. But I guess ultimately, as I continue on with the book, I'll get more of a feel of Ava and Alexander's relationship and Alexander's personality anyway. But you can tell that there might be a bit of a love triangle going on here between Ava. Does she want to, stick to this plan where she stays on the ground with Alexander, or does she want to maybe forgive Jack? He seems like the other choice of maybe a guy she can spend time in the skies with. And he definitely has they already have some amusing banter. I was still thrilled there were a lot of lines that, she's such a strong writer, especially of sort of witty lines, and that, were in the draft that still made it into this final book. There's even a line about friendship that made it from the draft to the book that I think about out of context all the time, about the way to make friends is to show up for people for their major events. I think about that line a lot. Lacie, thanks for that one. But anyway, that's where I am right now. I do think I will be finishing it really quickly over the weekend. Again, it's going to be a really breezy, fun read. I don't read a lot of romance, but this is definitely one I want to sink my teeth into, and I'll be reporting back on my final thoughts. And finally, next on the docket, I have this book, This Beautiful Life by Helen Schulman. This is another 2016 book that I put on my Goodreads TBR back in the day. It is one of my Jewish-themed TBR books. I'm trying to knock all of them out. Like, I read 3 back in January, and now I'm going to read the final 3 in June. And so this is number 2 of the final 3, and I will read from the back. When 15-year-old Jake Begmont receives, and then forwards to a friend, a sexually explicit video that an 8th grade admirer sent to him, the video goes viral within hours. The scandal that ensues threatens to shatter his family's sense of security and identity, and ultimately their happiness. This Beautiful Life is a devastating, clear-eyed portrait of modern life that will have readers debating their assumptions about family, morality, and the choices we make in the name of love. So yeah, heady stuff. I do assume there'll be some nominal Jewish content in this as well. I remember way back in 2016, I think I heard an interview with the author on one of the Jewish podcasts maybe, although, you know, it's way so long in the past I don't think I could dig that up again. But I am looking forward to this. So that about covers it for me now. I will leave all relevant information about stuff I've rambled on about down below, including information to our new U.S. federal holiday, Juneteenth. I remember, in fact, filming my Friday Reads last year on Juneteenth and talking about how I hoped it would enter the public consciousness a bit more, so mission accomplished, I hope. It's also Father's Day, so bright and early tomorrow I will be going to Baltimore to visit my father. I'm in the DC area right now. A good time, I suppose, to be able to bring a breezy romantic read with me to read, like something that'll go really quickly in my downtime. I'll be back on this channel within the next couple of days to show you my June book haul, so stay tuned. But for now, I guess I should go to bed. I'm really sleepy, hoping this won't be too rambly of a video to edit tomorrow morning, but we will see. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.